The Rachel Maddow Show, weeknights at 9 Eastern on MSNBC.
This time last night, we broke a little bit of news that the Defense Department was detailing active duty JAGs, active duty military lawyers, at the request of the Justice Department to go to the border to start prosecuting the Justice Department's immigration cases. We broke that news last night. The Defense Department has confirmed it. Tonight, we are going to break some more news that you have not heard anywhere else. This is an exclusive story that we have learned and confirmed today about the handling of the family separation policy by the senior ranks of the Trump administration, by one senior Trump administration official in particular. I'm going to have that breaking news for you in just one moment. All right. Hurricane Katrina became a hurricane on a Friday, August 25th in 2005. By the next day, by Saturday, a bunch of coastal parishes in Louisiana were under mandatory evacuation orders. On that first Saturday, day after the storm first became a hurricane, New Orleans was under an evacuation order as well, but it was a voluntary order. The city announced that people should get out. They announced that the Superdome would be opened as a shelter of last resort for people who couldn't get out. That was Saturday. By the dawn of the following day, on Sunday, Katrina was not just any old hurricane anymore. It was a Category 5 hurricane. And at that point on Sunday, the evacuation order for New Orleans became a mandatory evacuation order. We now know that, of course, was too late for many people already. Early the next morning, on Monday, Katrina made landfall. And that day, that Monday, the levees broke. And some places you could only see the rooftops above the water. Some places the water was so deep you couldn't even see the rooftops anymore. Again, the storm had become a hurricane on Friday. It hit land on Monday. When the storm unleashed that hell on New Orleans and on the Gulf Coast on Monday, it was clear that the evacuation orders, the transit plans, the rescue plans were woefully inadequate when they weren't just non-existent. People just had no way out. By Tuesday, the day after landfall, the Coast Guard had pulled hundreds of people off rooftops. By Tuesday, there were 20,000 people at the convention center where there was no food, no water, no services. Another 20,000 people had made their way to that shelter of last resort at the Superdome. By Tuesday, Americans were literally dying in plain view in New Orleans. By that point, by Tuesday, by the day after landfall, watching the news was like watching the end of the world. Thousands of people were feared dead at that point. And then the following day, on Wednesday, Condoleezza Rice went on vacation. She'd been doing a lot of international travel. She was tired. She decided she would have a New York City luxury vacation where she would stay at the Palace Hotel. She was Secretary of State. She wrote about it in her memoir years later. I flew to New York that evening. Upon arriving at the Palace Hotel, I flipped on the television. Indeed, the hurricane had hit New Orleans. I called Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff, inquiring if there was anything I could do. It's pretty bad, he said. We discussed the question of foreign help briefly. Mike was clearly in a hurry. He said he'd call me if he needed me. I hung up, got dressed, and went out to see Spamalot. Spamalot, the Monty Python musical. The Drudge Report was first to break the news that is, in fact, what Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice was doing at the apex of the death and destruction in New Orleans. This was the original Drudge Report mention from that day back in 2005. Quote, eyewitness Secretary of State Condi Rice laughs it up at Spamalot while Gulf Coast lays in tatters. Theatergoers on New York City's Great White Way were shocked to see the president's former national security advisor at the Monty Python farce last night. And that was in the Drudge Report. New York Daily News added a little color of their own, contributing to the fiddling while Rome burns impression given by her boss during the disaster, which may have claimed thousands of lives. Secretary Rice was booed by some audience members at Spamalot, the Monty Python musical at the Shubert Theater, when the lights went up after the performance. It was kind of an astonishing thing, right? That New York Daily News report was correct. People booed her for being there. You think that would be sort of a wake-up call, right? If what you were seeing on TV didn't indicate to you that maybe this wasn't a good time for a vacation, getting booed once you showed your face in public, you think it would be sort of a, wake-up moment. like giving what was going on with the hurricane, which everybody could see on TV and that she had been specifically briefed on as Secretary of State. And she'd been told in person it's very, very bad. And again, you could watch it on television, which in fact she says she was doing. She was watching it on television at the Palace Hotel as it spiraled from bad to worse to deadly to even worse than deadly. So that must have been like a real kind of come to Jesus moment, right? Like, oh, like maybe I've been reading this wrong. What did Condoleezza Rice do after she got booed at the musical farce in the midst of all this? Let's go back to her memoir. She says, quote, "The next morning, I went shopping at the Ferragamo shoe store down the block from my hotel." The website Gawker.com is dead now. It was killed off by Trump advisor Peter Thiel, the billionaire founder of PayPal, who is way more radical than people think he is. He thinks women getting the right to vote is a tragedy. I'm just saying. But Peter Thiel didn't like the way that Gawker covered him as a Silicon Valley guy, and so he killed Gawker as a news agency, as a news organization. Before he did so, one of their many scoops was that Gawker was first to report on the scene of Condoleezza Rice buying thousands of dollars worth of Italian shoes at the Ferragamo store in New York City while New Orleans flooded, and the administration she was a senior member of basically didn't respond at all. This was the Gawker report from that day. Quote, "Just moments ago at the Ferragamo on Fifth Avenue, Condoleezza Rice was seen spending several thousands of dollars on some nice new shoes. A fellow shopper, unable to fathom the absurdity of Rice's timing, went up to the secretary and reportedly shouted, 'How dare you shop for shoes while thousands are dying?' Gawker continues, "Never one to have her fashion choices questioned, Rice had her security physically remove the woman." And then Gawker's report finishes, "Angry lady, whoever you are, we love you. You are a true American and we'll go shoe shopping with you anytime." Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice later denied that anybody had actually yelled that at her at the Ferragamo store. But she did confirm that that is where she was, and that is what she was doing on that morning in New York City at the worst of the Hurricane Katrina crisis, while the federal government still had basically done nothing to respond. Condoleezza Rice shopping during Katrina was actually later cited as a reason why she could never, ever run for president of this country, even if she wanted to. In her memoir, she confirmed the Ferragamo report from Gawker. She confirmed the Spamalot report from the Daily News and the Drudge Report. She also confirmed the New York Post celebrity spotting mention on their gossip page, which caught her hitting a few balls with Monica Seles at the stadium at the U.S. Open. She confirmed all of that in her memoir. But to her credit, she also, in her memoir, explained how much she regretted it all. Quote, "I sat there kicking myself for having been so tone deaf. Quote, what had I been thinking?" That was 2005. Now it is 13 years later. We're under the next Republican presidency after George W. Bush. And our current catastrophe now is not an act of God, like Katrina was. This one is definitely an act of Donald Trump. But our current national harrowing moral catastrophe that is driving people to distraction is this new thing that the Trump administration started doing weeks ago, which has resulted in the mass separation of little kids and babies from their mothers and fathers. The Trump administration apparently started pursuing this policy in April. They have pursued it through yesterday. We still don't have good numbers, but the data we do have suggests the pace at which they were taking kids away from their parents accelerated from just under 50 a day to just under 70 a day at least before they stopped yesterday. Just as in a hurricane, though, where the disaster doesn't end when the wind and the rain stops, this catastrophe that we've got now of parents and kids having been taken apart, forcibly separated by the U.S. government, this is not over now either. By the government's own admission, we've got more than 2,000 kids that they have taken. And by all accounts, there don't seem to be any procedures in place for how they're going to get those kids back to their parents ever. They've taken these kids. In many cases, there's no paperwork following them. They've moved these kids all over this country. And there appears to be no plan for how to get them back to their mothers and fathers. Now, one thing Condoleezza Rice always had going for her in her defense in the shopping during Katrina scandal was that even though she was a very highly visible member of the George W. Bush administration, her job title was Secretary of State at the time of Hurricane Katrina. And Hurricane Katrina was a lot of things. It wasn't a foreign policy crisis, though, right? This catastrophe we've got now has a very, very specific roster of responsibility. When it comes to these kids who've been taken away from their parents, there is a guy in the government. There's a senior Trump administration official who's in charge of the kids who the government has taken. His name is Alex Azar. He's the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Right? So it's the Justice Department and agencies of the Homeland Security Department who arrest people at the border and charge and hold the parents. But this new Trump administration policy has the government forcibly taking the kids out of their parents' arms. Where the kids then go is to Alex Azar. They give the kids to HHS, which is the agency that Alex Azar runs. These thousands of kids who have been taken away from their mothers and fathers, he's the one who's got them. Alex Azar. We can now report exclusively tonight on what Alex Azar has been doing as this crisis has spiked and as he has become responsible for thousands of children who have been taken away from their parents. As the number of kids taken away from their parents has reached critical mass, as the country has started to realize the reality and the scale of this policy, as his agency started to have to open their first new purpose-built facilities that they constructed specifically to hold kids apart from their parents. That first facility was opened by Alex Azar's agency on Friday. That's that tent city they opened in Tornillo, Texas to hold kids. They opened that on Friday. You want to know what Alex Azar did the day after his agency opened that new facility? As this crisis got big enough that his agency had to start opening new purpose-built facilities to hold all the kids, because there were that many, as the nation started to absolutely freak out over this policy, as the pace of taking kids away from their parents went from almost 50 to almost 70 a day and beyond. You want to know what he did after he just opened up that first tent city for the kids? Alex Azar spent the next day, Saturday, this past weekend, in New Hampshire attending his 30th college reunion. Alex Azar was apparently class of 1988 at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. Here's the student newspaper at Dartmouth announcing when he was confirmed as Secretary of HHS. Here he is on the Dartmouth class of 1988 webpage, confirming, RSVPing, that he would be attending his reunion this weekend. You might expect that even if you'd RSVP'd in advance, once a crisis like this broke out and you're the guy in charge of all the kids that have been taken, you might, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't make good on that RSVP. Maybe you would cancel. No, we have spoken with multiple sources who have all told us that Secretary Azar, in fact, spent Saturday, this past weekend, in New Hampshire at his college reunion. We contacted Secretary Azar's office to ask where Mr. Azar was this weekend as the crisis of kids taken away from their parents and held in custody of his agency hit a boiling point, as hundreds of kids were moved into Secretary Azar's brand new purpose-built facility to hold them. Secretary Azar's office would not comment to us on where he was this weekend. Secretary Azar has been saying all along throughout this crisis that basically everything's fine here, nothing to worry about. He told the Washington Post yesterday that, yes, of course, he has personally visited these facilities where the agency he runs is holding all of these kids apart from their parents. He said, of course, he's visited them. He wouldn't say which facilities he has visited or when, but he did tell the Post definitely he has been there in person. He's seen them. His office today would also not confirm to us which shelters Secretary Azar has actually visited or when he was there. Secretary Azar has also been insisting that there's no reason to worry about these kids being taken away from their parents. There's no reason to worry that they won't end up back with their parents. There's no reason to think that there'll be any problem getting these kids back to their parents, because his agency is on it. He's keeping these kids and parents in touch. Secretary Azar told the Post today, quote, "We keep in touch with the parents under any circumstances to ensure placement with relatives or if the parents are released." Secretary Alex Azar may believe that's what's happening with the kids who are being held in his agency's custody, that for each kid held by his agency, held by HHS, HHS is keeping in touch with that kid's parents. But he's the only person who believes that's what's happening. Here's Jonathan Blitzer in the New Yorker today reporting on a facility in Chaparral, New Mexico, where there are 50 mothers in one wing of that facility who have been separated from their kids. Quote, few of them even know where their kids are. Mothers are going to be leaving this facility with psychological problems. None of the agents has explained to the mothers how they can locate their children. So there's 50 women being held in New Mexico who have kids that have been taken away from them. Alex Azar hasn't been keeping in touch with those parents in terms of them getting their kids back, let alone even knowing where their kids are. The 239 kids being held in New York City, it's become a New York scandal now because public officials here, including the mayor of New York City and the governor of New York, say they weren't notified. They had no idea that 239 kids separated from their parents were being brought to New York City. They say they basically found out when everybody else did, when a local TV station broke the news about all these girls being held in Harlem after they got a tip that several of these girls were being moved in the middle of the night. The mayor saying now, quote, how is it possible that none of us knew there were 239 kids right here in our own city? How is the federal government holding back that information from the people of this city and holding back the help these kids could need? The head of Catholic Charities, which is trying to find ways to get these kids back to their parents, tells the New York Times today, quote, there is no system whatsoever to track these family separations, no effort systematically to reunite these families. There's no supervisor. There's no database saying child here, parent there, so they can come back together. Washington Post has now published this account from a federal public defender who described a hearing with a mother whose child had been taken away from her. Quote, one of my colleagues asked the federal agent on the stand about the whereabouts of my client's child. The Justice Department prosecutor objected to the relevance of that question. The judge then turned on the prosecutor, demanding to know why this was not relevant. At one point, the judge slammed his hand on the desk, sending a pen flying. This type of emotional display is unheard of in federal court. The judge said, I cannot understand this. If someone at the jail takes your wallet, they give you a receipt. They take your kids and you get nothing? Not even a slip of paper? No, not even a slip of paper. Is your kid old enough to have memorized any identifying information about you that somebody somewhere might be able to elicit from them someday to try to help them find their way back to you wherever you are? If you don't know where they are, they don't know where you are. Is your kid old enough to talk? Not even a slip of paper. That is how Alex Azar, the head of the Health and Human Services Department, has thus far been handling the job of getting these 2,000 plus kids who are in his care back to their parents. There isn't a system. There isn't a database. There's nothing, no paperwork connecting the parent from whom the kid was separated and the kid from whom the parent was separated. Nothing. So just hope the kid can talk. Maybe hope the kid gets a lawyer. Hope the kid knows mom's detention facility location and her alien number, and then maybe they can sort it out on their own after getting somebody to change their diaper. I mean, that's how HHS Secretary Alex Azar has thus far been handling the kids that he is in charge of. In addition to that dramatic report from that public defender today, the Washington Post also published this, which they describe as a map and a list of facilities holding these kids separated from their parents all over the country. The Post says they'll update this as they get more information. And it's interesting, they're actually asking Washington Post readers to help them crowdsource this story. Quote, the Post is continuing to report on where migrant children were sent after they were separated from their parents. Do you know of a facility where these children may be? Submit a location. Click here to submit a location. And they're building this national map to try to keep track of where these kids have been taken, these kids who have been taken away from their parents. I mean, you got to get it from like people who might have been eyewitnesses or who might have seen kids somewhere being held somewhere, maybe when they dropped the mail off there. So I mean, this is how we're, as a nation, tracking information about where these kids are, hoping that anonymous sources and eyewitnesses and people who are part of this big secret system will tell the press. And maybe if the press publicizes enough of it, maybe that can result in lawyers getting to them. And then maybe the lawyers can figure out some way to connect it with the parents. And Alex Azar says it's fine. Everybody's in touch. Relax. As we have been reporting, though, you take thousands of kids forcibly away from their parents. No matter where you try to hide those kids, this is a secret that is too big to be kept. Last night, a passenger on an American Airlines flight from Texas to New York came to believe that she was on a plane with a bunch of kids who were not traveling of their own accord and who were definitely not traveling with their parents. By the time that flight landed, this was the scene at LaGuardia Airport. Hundreds of people showing up to offer support, carrying signs written in Spanish, singing songs, looking for the kids. It does seem like the government did bring a bunch of unaccompanied boys into New York through LaGuardia Airport in the very late hours last night. And this is after, you'll remember, American Airlines said they wouldn't allow their flights to be used for kids who were being taken away from their families. This is from the New York Times. Quote, protesters held signs at security gates that read, Bienvenidos a New York and Te amamos. And they sang protest songs in English and Spanish outside Terminal B, not long after a group of 7 boys was spotted getting off American Airlines Flight 2716, wearing dark hoodies and carrying government-labeled belongings. A circle of about 200 protesters gathered along the taxi line to plan for how they might lend support to other kids getting off other planes. An American Airlines spokesman said in an interview that the airline had delayed the flight from Dallas-Fort Worth by 33 minutes until the airline could get reassurance from government officials that these kids were not among those who had been separated from their parents. Quote, but a cluster of flight attendants who had been on board stood nearby after the children deplaned, visibly distraught. One flight attendant saying, quote, they lied to us. One of the people who turned up to protest said she'd been told that a crew member on one of the flights tried to communicate with one of these unaccompanied kids by writing on a piece of paper, quote, what are your names? What are your parents' names? Maybe the flight attendants will do it. The local press is now starting to find kids all over the country because they're getting tips from all over the country for people who know something about where these kids are. This is from the Detroit Free Press. Quote, in the middle of the night, 2 baby boys arrived in Grand Rapids after being separated from their immigrant parents at the southern border weeks ago. One child is 8 months old, the other is 11 months old. Both children have become part of a bigger group of 50 immigrant kids who've landed in foster care in western Michigan under the Trump administration's zero-tolerance border policy. The average age of these kids is 8, a number that has alarmed foster care employees who are struggling to comfort the growing group of kids who are turning up in Michigan at nighttime. They're younger than ever, they say, and the kids are petrified. Quote, these kids are arriving between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. Not only are they being separated from their family, they're being transported to a place that they don't know in the middle of the night. We have found on many occasions that no one has explained to these children where they are going. These kids are hysterical. They're screaming out for mom and dad. Many have gone 30 or more days without talking to their parents because their parents can't be located. But wait, I thought Alex Azar said they're constantly in touch with the parents. He's got this part under control. This was the Baltimore Sun today, where they found more kids. Quote, immigration agents have sent dozens of children to Maryland. Some are being held in dormitories in Anne Arundel and Baltimore counties, according to people involved in the process. Many of the kids have come with little information. One is 18 months old. Several are too young to speak to their new caregivers or help social workers track down relatives who might be able to take them in. Lawyers are trying to figure out how to put together asylum claims for 6-year-olds who don't know why they fled their countries. Regional director for a service organization that's trying to care for about 15 of these kids that turned up in Maryland tells the Baltimore Sun that the children they are seeing are, quote, more traumatized than those that this agency has helped before because of the forced separation from their parents. Also tonight, we are getting the first reports about kids not just being taken away from their parents and traumatized that way. We're also getting the first reports about kids turning up in hospitals. The New York Daily News reporting tonight that in New York, 2 city public hospitals have treated 12 young kids who were separated from their parents at the border. The children were brought to 2 hospitals, Bellevue in Manhattan and North Central Bronx Hospital in the Bronx. The director of pediatric emergency services at North Central Bronx telling the paper tonight that she and her clinicians have felt helpless in treating the children who have generally arrived without any medical records. And so it's Michigan, and it's Maryland, and it's New York, and it's Seattle, and Portland, and Phoenix, and Kansas City, and Chicago, and Pittsburgh, and all these other places on this map. This map that the Washington Post is still building as we speak, based on tips from the public, because that's how we're going to figure out where these kids are. Because apparently it's going to be like flight attendants and people piecing it together to try to get them back to their parents. There is a cabinet secretary who's in charge of taking care of these kids and getting them back to their parents. His name is Alex Azar. And I don't know if he was wearing Ferragamo shoes or if any Monty Python was involved, but as this crisis exploded over the past week, he spent the weekend going to his college reunion in New Hampshire. Anybody who's got a picture of him there, I will plant a tree in your name if you send it to us. I'm only sort of kidding.
The Rachel Maddow Show, weeknights at 9 Eastern on MSNBC.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.